Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical, and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
So welcome to the show. Today's Thursday and this is going out live on Mintwave radio station. You can simply ask Alexa or go to the website karenrobertscoaching.com/Mintwave-radio to listen live. If this is via podcast, you can also go to the same website and you can download the app for Apple and Android. And there's not just my podcast, but we have a complete network. So take your pick. Please subscribe to any that take your fancy. Follow and feel free to leave a comment. Today's episode is 150 and today we have Amy Shearer, who is a coach, and we're going to be talking about from depleted to empowered, 3 ways that she made her shift. I'm your host, Karen Roberts, and we help coaches and therapists get their message heard to the people who need to hear it. So Amy is a former fashion retail executive for over 15 years. She's an emotional wellness facilitator and embodiment coach, and she helps women ready to embrace their inner power to have wholehearted relationships, ongoing wellness, fulfilling careers, and a connection to deeper meaning in their lives. She's a master life and success, spit it out, Karen, success coach, master and trainer of NLP, EFT, time, hypnosis, certified breathwork facilitator, and somatic stress release facilitator. Amy is a Californian girl who resides in Kingston, New York, with her husband, Brian, and sweet rescue dog, Brinkley. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me and for that awesome introduction.
There's a lot to go through there. So why don't you start with sharing so 15 years in retail, what was the transition and why?
Yeah. So it actually started in December of 2018. My husband and I were in Hawaii on vacation. We had booked, it was our Christmas gift to each other. We were there for Christmas. We had booked this trip a year in advance, and we're so excited to get to Kauai and spend 2 weeks there. And I found myself like waking up a few days after, adjusting to the time. Being in New York to Hawaii, it's about a 5-hour time difference, much more extreme for you in the UK, but definitely just as difficult for me. I'm not good with time change. And I found myself really unhappy. Just here I am in paradise, my favorite place so far in the world has been Kauai. We have beautiful memories there. And I found myself really depressed and just felt really disconnected, from my relationship from my husband, didn't feel connected to my career anymore, felt like it was draining everything out of me. And I was up before everybody else. We had a few other friends staying with us. And I went into the mirror and I was like, I can't do this anymore. There has to be more than this. And I was probably in my early 40s at that time. I was suffering from endometriosis. I was on the cusp of having to have a hysterectomy. And I had this moment of realization that I needed to be really honest with myself as to how much I could actually do, how much could I actually manage at one time. And what I came to realize was that I needed to take a break from my job. I needed to be really vulnerable and say to myself, yeah, right now you just aren't able to do it. You need to take some time off and heal. Up until this point, I'd had some pretty major things happen in my life. My mother died when I was 23. My dad died in 2009. And I never took time off to heal. Like I just kept going. It was like the foot on the gas pedal, go avoid the feelings. Yep. And this was my breaking point. I had come to a place where it wasn't possible for me to move forward anymore. And my body was like screaming at me. So I had that aha moment. I had a nice good cry in front of that mirror. And I've definitely come to realize, and I'm sharing the story, that that self-vulnerability, like when you are finally able to see the root cause of some of the physical ailments that you're feeling, your chronic stress, your feeling of just being out of touch with yourself, and even, the impact it has on your relationships. It takes a moment of really looking at yourself and saying, I have to get back in the driver's seat of my life, and I have to start to take charge, because up until this point, I had allowed everybody else's needs and desires for me to be my purpose, to be the reason I was moving forward. And it brought me to a place of being completely out of alignment with what I wanted. And my body was finally telling me no more. Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting that and it's going to happen. Like you say, you've just put foot on the gas pedal and just kept going because you don't want to deal, because none of us do when we're confronted with things like that. You feel like, because it's only a perception, right? Because it's not the truth, but
Right.
many of us do it, that we feel that we've got to stay strong and just keep on going. But isn't it funny that the body will eventually go, and there is a quicker way, but it's, like you say, dealing with the stuff.
Yeah.
Easier to say it than actually do it.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I didn't know how to manage grief. Grief is also one of those complex emotions that is, I'm definitely in a better place now around the death of my parents, but it's so many different feelings all under the umbrella of grief. And I thought that I could just process it all internally. And what I came to realize is that, and with my training in terms of nervous system regulation, co-regulation, so talking to somebody about it and talking to somebody that is really open to listening. There was a lot of hesitancy for me to share a lot of my feelings. I felt like I was going to be a burden. So when I came back from Hawaii, I decided, okay, I think it's time for some therapy. And I think that was the major moment. And I was very fortunate to find a therapist immediately that I could sync with, because I know that's often a challenge for many people. And I look back on that now and I'm like, gosh, that was definitely a gift from the universe, was that she was 2 blocks from my apartment in Brooklyn and I could see her every week, and it was so simple and so easy. One of the biggest things that got me from that place of feeling so depleted and burnt out was, again, the first finally listening to my body. My body wasn't trying to hurt me with endometriosis. It wasn't mad at me. It wasn't like, I always saw it as we were in a battle. And then I realized, actually, you've been ignoring the signs. Your body has been talking to you for a really long time, like your chronic headaches, your inability to sleep through the night, the painful periods, like your digestive system being completely out of whack. Like, it's been talking to you. You just haven't been listening. You haven't thought about how that could at all be related to the stress and the emotions that you're storing in your body. And so the first step was starting to talk about those feelings and the emotional regulation. It was nice to have somebody see me and hear me and hold that space. And I soon learned that a lot of the choices that I had made in my life regarding how I manage my life, meaning how I navigate it in relationships, how I show up at work, my overachieving streak and my people-pleasing streak, was based on a lot of things that happened to me as a kid, and that there had been some choices that I had made, and this was the hardest pill to swallow, right? Like, when you see yourself in burnout, you're like, you mean it's not all of my boss's fault? Wait a minute. I just want to blame everybody else, right? I want to blame my boss. It is true that I was in an untenable situation in my job, but I was the one that let that get to that point, right? Like, I never set the boundary. I never said, I'm unavailable for that. That's out of the scope of my position. And so it was a tough pill to swallow. And also it was empowering, because up until this point, I thought that my life was dictated by everybody else's needs, choices, and how they wanted to see me move forward. And then I was like, oh, if I can take back or recognize that I have a role in this, it also is empowering. It's telling me that I can make different choices. I can say no. I can choose to do a different job. I can create some boundaries in my relationships, in relationships that feel really unbalanced, where I'm just always giving and not being in this reciprocity, this balance of relationships. So yeah, the first step was just, I guess the very first step was that moment in the mirror. And then the second was really coming to this place of, okay, my body's been talking to me. I need to start listening to it, and getting to a place where through the emotional regulation, seeing what I was right, like being at cause for where I had landed. And instead of kind of blaming myself and judging myself, I was able to work through that through some self-forgiveness and come to a place of, this is actually empowering. Like, I actually have more choice than I thought I did. So that,
but that is it. That's it, isn't it? It's, again, if I say this a lot, we're funny creatures, aren't we?
We really are.
But only because we actually don't seem to be taught about ourselves too much. Because if we'd figured this out a long time ago, imagine if the children going through school now could have this all figured out. Everything would change in one generation, wouldn't it? Be dealt with. Because what you just said there, it sounded like it was just really the acceptance.
Yeah.
It's just accepting what is and why. And I love what you said there about the not judging ourselves, because we seem to do that the worst. I'm sure we do. I try not to, but yes, okay, I will judge people. It is almost like an auto. We make stories in our head, prejudging things, certain things, and we shouldn't. But more importantly, actually, we shouldn't judge ourselves. We should be a little bit more compassionate to ourselves, accepting, and then I see that's 100% as empowering, because you can't change your boss, you can't change your partner, you can only change you. So how did it feel? How did you notice any just change in how you were when you actually had that realization? And was that from the therapist, or did that come after?
So I left. I ended up leaving retail in 2019, in July of 2019, and it took me probably a year to finally get to that place with some really good therapy. And of course, we were in the midst of the pandemic at that point, which brought up a lot of other stuff. And in the middle of 2020, I also experienced breathwork for the first time. And with the combination of the therapy and starting to learn about somatic healing, that was actually the pivotal point for me, because it allowed me to see that not only was my body talking to me through some of the pain that I was feeling, but I also could learn to integrate some of the memories, some of the pain, some of the emotions that were trapped in my body, right? Like, we store a lot of energy and emotions in our body. I could actually fully integrate some of these experiences with the coupling of emotional regulation and this nervous system somatic healing. And I'll never forget my first breathwork experience when I did it for 90 minutes, which I don't really recommend. It's a 45-minute journey that I did, and I did it. I don't know how I got into a 90-minute class, but there were things that I had been thinking about and talking about for a year with my therapist that finally, after that session, I felt like I no longer feel activated by that memory. I feel like I have closure, right? And that was a huge moment for me, because I said, oh my gosh, our body has so much. It's like, I finally fully understood the whole idea of holistic healing, right? Like, we have to include our body. Like, we have to integrate that. We have to bring it in, because what our mind can't process, the body is storing. So all of the stuff that I thought I was healing and taking care of from up here, there was so much in my body that it needed to come out. So I think,
for people who haven't heard of this word breath work, is coming out a lot, and I'm seeing a lot of coaches doing this, but what does that even mean? What are you talking
Yeah.
about? How would the listeners understand what that is and how that would help?
Yeah. So there's many different kinds of breath work, and there are a lot of people that name it their brand. So there's like the Wim Hof breath, and there's probably a lot of others out there. That's the only one I can think of at the moment. But there's a lot of breath work. If you've done yoga before, there's different breaths that you sometimes learn in yoga. The breath work I'm speaking about is what we call the 3-part conscious connected breath. And it's a breath that's often used by shamans during healing ceremonies. And essentially what happens is for 45 minutes, you experience the breath. There are different ways of doing it. You can breathe in through your mouth, you can breathe in through your nose, and you breathe into your belly and then your chest, and then you take a really long exhale. So it's belly, chest, exhale. And this process, as you start, you're like, what am I doing? Your mind's, this is weird. Like, you have to get over that hump, that first 10 minutes or so of doing the breath. And then what happens is you start to shift states of consciousness. So just what would happen in terms of a meditation, bless you.
Sorry.
That's okay. I have terrible allergies right now, so I get it. It's like, this is peak season for me. So in the beginning, you're like in that wakeful state in your mind. What's going on? If you were about to sit down and meditate, or if you were, I always equate it to that first few minutes of going on a run. You're like, I don't know if I really want to do this. At least that's what it's like for me. And then you get into this beautiful flow with your breath. You just have to trust it. And you start to shift states of consciousness. So you move from that waking state to an alpha state, so that light meditative state. And if you continue to breathe for about 20 minutes, you'll go into a theta state. And the breath acts as like this big broom that sweeps energy, emotions, just stuff that you don't even need to identify with, out of your body. That is what's actually happening with your cells. If you were to look at it from a biological place, this breath brings in more energy and you're cycling out old stuff. And most people feel a sense of clarity and relief and relaxation at the end of it. The breath connects to your parasympathetic nervous system. So you definitely come out of a place of being in like fight or flight. But also it can be an emotional experience because you're moving so much energy from your body. You probably will release some sadness, maybe some anger. I've gotten to a place where I feel in beautiful amounts of joy and happiness where I'll just start giggling. And these are all connected to the chemicals in your body that are being released through breath. At the end of the 45 minutes, it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
It's amazing that something that actually is so simple, we all have to breathe.
Right.
Yet we're not breathing correctly. And we're all under so much stress, including the kids. They're putting the kids under so much stress with school. Do you think people really realize how much cortisol or how often cortisol seems to be in their bloodstream, affecting them on a mental, physical, and spiritual level on a daily basis?
Yeah.
But so many people avoid doing this. Like you said, it takes time. And in the beginning, like I used to, and I'm not a yoga instructor, but I used to teach something sort of a mixture. It's called Body Balance. It was a mixture of Tai Chi, yoga, and Pilates. And at the end of the class, it would just be a 10-minute, not even 10 minutes sometimes, relaxation, bit of a meditation. And so all the sort of, what I call the gym bunnies that just want to go at it hard, they're getting up and walking out. And you're thinking, you need this actually more than I do. Do you want to swap? Come back, lie down, because they struggle to, like you said, that first 10 minutes. And yeah, I can totally relate. Running, oh my goodness, I haven't done that in a while. But
I know, same. That's why I don't do it anymore, really.
No. I just
My knees can't handle it.
No, that's not my thing. But yeah, you're right. Like this, I think people want instant results. And like you've just said there, you said earlier on that a year until you had those aha moments from doing something consistently, from speaking to somebody every single week, it still took you a year. Now, Maybe it could have happened if you'd found breath work earlier. Who knows? But it's irrelevant, really, because I don't think it matters. I think that the point is, if you want things to change, it's not going to happen overnight. It takes practice. And doing this breath work, it's going to take a while for you to get into it, because it is hard. If you're not used to it, it's hard to quieten the mind. It's hard to do. We know now it's not actually hard. It's actually simple. But it's so simple, it's crazy, actually, isn't it? Really. But because we've been conditioned to go and all of this, it seems hard in the beginning. It takes a while to get into the zone, or
I
but
agree.
It's essential. It's essential. It's essential. If people want to change, then this is going to help. Now, something else that you mentioned earlier about, and I thought that needs an explanation as well, is, okay, you talked about a lot about the nervous system regulation. How does that tie in? So obviously, when you're breathing correctly, there's lots of physiological actions going on within the cells and whatnot. But what are you specifically talking about here?
Yeah. So for that particular breath, it's good for wherever you are in terms of your nervous system. So I don't know that most people realize that there's two ends of your nervous system. One, which is the sympathetic that most people identify with, is like flight or fright. Like they're highly what we call activated. They're in this place of maybe feeling anxious or having the symptoms of a racing mind, not being able to sit still. And it's interesting, to your point, many people that are in that state often find themselves doing things like going for really long runs, like pushing it at the gym, going, right? And actually what their body needs is to downregulate the system, which is to drop back into the body. And on the other end of the spectrum is what we call the dorsal vagal part of your nervous system. And this, we actually go, for all of us, we swing back and forth throughout the day. That's just the natural way of our nervous system acting. And we all operate within this window of tolerance, meaning how well we're able to manage or be in the capacity of stress throughout the day. So I'll explain that more in a second. So on the other end of the spectrum is the dorsal vagal system. And it's connected to the vagus nerve, which we could do a whole nother conversation on the vagus nerve. But the dorsal vagal system is where we're in that kind of fawn freeze mode. So we drop into that place, and it feels more like depression. It feels more like apathy. It feels like exhaustion, like you can't get out of bed. And that's typically when we talk about burnout, we end up in that place. So burnout happens after spending way too much time in this highly activated state of the sympathetic nervous system. And so when we're in burnout, we actually need to upregulate our system. We actually need to bring more activity into our nervous system. And there are special techniques to do that. And then in between is this beautiful place of being calm and content. It is possible. We can get there, right? And so for nervous system regulation, what we're really doing, back to that window of tolerance, is if you're in high sympathetic state all of the time or in this dorsal vagal state, that window narrows. So you end up spending more time in these highly activated states or in the dorsal state where you're very low. With nervous system regulation, what we're doing is we're expanding that window again. So you have the ability to navigate your day in a place that's, okay, I just got an email from my boss and he's asking me to go into his office. And so you feel the anxiety, right? You feel the activation in your body. And then you go into the office, everything's fine. And you're able to bring yourself back down into potentially that window, or you feel like, okay, I'm just going to go take some breaths, and you're able to bring yourself down even more, right? And then you go and you have lunch, which eating, because the dorsal vagal is attached to your stomach, you drop. So sometimes when you feel really tired after you eat, it's because your nervous system is doing its job. So in that moment, it's nice to take a walk. That's why they say after eating, go take a walk, like upregulate your system. So nervous system regulation isn't about not ever feeling stressed, because that's just life. It's about expanding your window and saying, oh, I know how to regulate myself. I have the capacity to do that. And with nervous system regulation, there are special techniques that you can do if you're in that sympathetic state or in that dorsal vagal state. Do it for 6 weeks and you will have an expanded window of tolerance. You just have to be consistent with it. So for breath work, the beauty of breath work, especially that 45 minutes of breathing, is that it works for both ends, right? Because it's really getting a lot of energy out. It's actually beautiful for those that are in that sympathetic state because they are doing something active, like they can feel like they can focus on something. And for those that are in that burnout state, which I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to bring in more energy with my breath. So I find it to be a beautiful technique for wherever you are within that kind of scale of the nervous system. And there are different types of breath that will do different things. But what I usually host are these breathwork journeys that are really good for wherever you are landing on that scale.
So it sounds like you just got to have the right tools in your toolbox, because one can be used for one thing, and although it's the same, like you say, it's the same, but you can either make it more energetic or make it more calming. That's what I'm hearing from you. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. And so how does this have a knock-on effect to your relationships?
It's interesting. I didn't realize, and in the work that I do with my clients, I didn't realize how everything comes down to relationships. We can't really navigate life without being in relationship with other people. As much as sometimes I'm a big introvert, I could be a hermit for a long time, but I do need a big part of nervous system regulation is co-regulation, which is why it was so challenging for so many in the pandemic when we were so isolated. It was really hard for many people. And that is because there was that absence of co-regulation for a lot of people. I learned, and I'm sure you've heard this a lot on the show, but when I'm in an activated state, meaning I'm stressed out, or if I'm in that dorsal vagal state where I'm really apathetic, it really impacts how I filter information coming in from other people. So if I'm really in that depressed state, I see it as like a negative against me, and it pulls me further into this feeling of like apathy about engaging with other people. If I'm in that highly activated state, I feel like I'm defensive. I'm like, I don't have the ability to actually sit and listen and process. And through this whole process, you said it a few minutes ago, the second thing that really got me to this place of feeling empowered was moving from this place of fear and learning how to be compassionate with myself through releasing the judgments, through being really vulnerable with myself. It has allowed me to be in compassion. And I needed to do that with mindset work, emotional work, and the somatic work, and allowing me to feel compassionate with myself, seeing that I have all this baggage, this designer luxury baggage, I call it, behind me that I needed to like work through, and how it influenced how I show up in the world and how I perceive the world, right? Like projection is perception. Like everything that I was perceiving isn't necessarily true. And so when I'm in those extreme states, it's harder for me to take a step back and pause and say, okay, what about that interaction is troubling me? What about that is, the word, a lot of people use the word trigger. I use the word activated. What is activating me in me? Because activation is actually what's happening to your nervous system. And your nervous system is impacted by old memories, your emotions, like things that remind you of experiences that you had when you were probably very young, that it's bringing up some old stuff that you need to look at. And so by doing this work around nervous system regulation and learning about your emotions and releasing those emotions, when you are in a relationship with someone, you're able to say, okay, I know that if I have all this designer luggage, that they also do too. And that right now, that person's showing something. If I'm feeling activated, it means that there's something here for me. It's reflecting something in me that I need to heal. And also, I can also say, I'm going to pause for a moment, and I'm feeling really hurt at the moment, and recognizing your emotion, expressing your emotion, and saying it in a way that is being compassionate for you, but also not in a way that's confrontational or blaming. And I'm talking about relationships that you really value and that you are working on, and like your marriage or with your parents. A lot of my clients are working on relationships with their parents.
Wow.
Being in this place of, I need to see what was happening there for me, and I'm going to come back and let's have a conversation about it. But if we're in those kind of extreme states of our nervous system, it makes it really challenging. I certainly didn't get to that place right away. It requires, again, like that compassion and also that vulnerability with yourself, that you need to look at something within you.
And having the understanding of what's going on, because again, we're not taught that. And that's interesting that you're dealing with a lot of people working with their relationship with their parents. But again, their generation, my parents' generation, would never have understood.
Yeah.
They would have never had an understanding of this stuff because they weren't taught it.
Yeah.
None of us know what we don't know. We wouldn't be in this place if you hadn't have been introduced to this kind of.
Yeah.
For me, I would say this has all definitely come out of lockdown. A lot of the things I'd never even heard of. What's inner child work and shadow work? What's that? You just, unless you're around it, why would you? Because it isn't the mainstream. It's not taught. But I think it's brilliant because relationships are going to be healed, because when you have that awareness, now, like you say, you can do something about it. And you talk about it is empowering. But one thing, again, I want to go back to that you mentioned. So you've mentioned it a couple of times. And again, so for the listeners and myself, somatic healing.
Oh, yeah.
Can you explain? Tell us more.
Yeah. So soma is the body, and breathwork is an example of somatic healing and is really powerful and very supportive for many. There are other kinds of somatic healing. So it can be meditative movement. Somatics could be as simple as a walking meditation. It could be learning to express your emotions through movement, which is a lot of what I do through the somatic stress release. Our bodies were designed to process stress in a certain way. And that is through, you get activated, you sit with it, you're like, where is this activation in my body? You don't even need to identify with the story around it or the emotion. You just sit with what's there. And then you mobilize it. When we were hunters and gatherers and there was like a bear chasing us, like we knew exactly what we needed to do. We needed to run. Yeah. And now we have these activations whether it's a conversation in a relationship, or you're sitting in traffic, or it's the stack of bills, those things are activating you. And the thing is that
there's no bear.
There's no bear. There's no bear. And what we need to do is figure out how to get that energy out of our body. So it can be as simple as like screaming into a pillow, or crying, or laughing, or stomping your feet, or doing jumping jacks, or some sort of mobilization to get that energy out of your body. And then
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And then you come out of the deactivation and you're like, oh, okay. So I now have the ability to look at this in a different state. And in this state, what was really activating me in that conversation with my dad or my boss or whatever it might have been? And that's the next level of it. But being in this place where you don't have to hold that. If you're feeling it, most of us know what it feels like to have stress, right? If you're feeling that in your body, like it's time, you need to get it out in some form. Even I like just shake my body. Like after each session, I just do some shaking and do some movement. And that in itself feels really good. Rocking, there's all these different techniques that I teach in my 90-day program. And if we're able to start to honor our body in that way and say, oh, okay, yeah, I feel that energy, let's get it out. You'll really start to notice that some of those things like digestive problems, my endometriosis is in a much better place. It's well managed now. I don't have the headaches I used to. I'm in the midst of perimenopause, and I feel like now compared to where I was even like 2 years ago is much better. And I really think involving the body and healing and listening to the body is key. It's so important. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that all makes a lot of sense. I come from the fitness industry myself, and I've gone for. I can, from what you're sharing there, I can see myself back then and the different sort of things that I've gone through. As in, yeah, I've gone through the burnout because I was go too many high energy classes. I think adrenal almost burnout, and then I introduced the more body balance, and I was better. I foolishly gave it up and went back into the hardcore, went to burnout again. And so gosh, I'm not learning from my mistakes there. I didn't learn from my mistakes. But also on the flip side of this, I've always realized that exercise is such an important part for your mental health, your well-being. But yes, more importantly, linked to stress. Because yeah, you've only got to look at I don't know, little deer running away from a
Yeah.
they run, they're up, they're fight, flight, freeze. It's either they stay put or they run off, and then as soon as the threat is gone, that's its head down and back eating grass like nothing ever happened. But yes, we're not true. I suppose that they've released it, haven't they? They've released all that stress, that cortisol that's come into their body, and they've just released it because they've gone on for a long run, and we're not doing that. And that is the thing, isn't it? It's just I don't think people are really realizing how much stress they're under while sitting at their desk, or like you said, sitting in a car waiting in traffic.
Yeah. And actually, sorry to interrupt, but like being at your desk all day long and like constantly managing email, constantly managing communication, being in these endless meetings, like all of that. And that, to be really honest, when I look back and I think about my job, when I became an executive was when I started to feel that, because I was constantly in these conversations. It was constant conversation all of the time. And my mind was never resting. And there was other things. There was a lot of travel. Like I was traveling across the country, like once a week. It's too much on my body, the plane. Now I have like, when I go on a plane, I have to do all these like rituals for myself to not go back to that place. But it's true. Like the body really does need to move, and you don't even need to know that's activating you. But if you don't do any kind of movement at all, it's just going to build. It's going to build up. So even with your example with the deer being chased by the bear, right? Or the lion or whatever, sometimes when they do freeze, right, they'll freeze. And you'll see, I mean, I see this all the time because we have deer everywhere. They're like frozen. If I stand really still, they might not see me, kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they run, and afterwards they shake themselves out. You see them shake their leg, like, and that is the release. That's how animals mobilize. Yeah. Yeah.
So they're doing it instinctively, and we are a little bit slow. What did I say earlier? We're funny creatures, aren't we?
We are.
Because we're a little bit slow on the of the acceptance of what's going on, because it's not being taught in general. Yeah. Unless somebody finds somebody like yourself and really has an understanding of what's going on. Yeah, I didn't realize that sort of even meditation or walking meditation is a form of somatic healing. But this is, so for some people, I don't know, they might look at yoga as being, what's the spiritual connection? It's, for me, it's all the spiritual connection. But we're not talking about religion here, are we? We're just talking about, for you, what is the real connection with all of this?
Yeah. So that breathwork experience that I had, because it shifts you into different states of consciousness, which is also what meditation does. It brought me to a place of feeling a deeper connection to the energy of my parents that had died and feeling them on an energetic level. And I then realized that there's just so much more to life than what I was giving it credit for. I was very surface value. There was actually a lot of fear in believing in some of that, because I grew up with a very religious side of my family, and I pushed that away. It felt too restrictive to me. And so leaning into the spiritual part of this, which is actually the third thing that really helped me to get to this place, was believing in the soulful parts of the souls of people, and believing that we all are here in some form of service. And that helped me get to the place of being a coach. And it also helped me to really feel into the concept of energy and energy work. And I'm not a Reiki master or anything of that nature, but I do recognize that things are energy. And that to me feels really beautiful. And so all of this work, working on your emotions, working on your nervous system, energy and relationships, all of it is about energy. And stepping into work that felt really aligned to me, learning about what my needs are and my values in life, which absolutely shifted after I went through this experience. Like, I call this, for many of us, we go through these moments. It used to be called a midlife crisis. I don't like to call it that. I call it a midlife awakening, right? It's an awakening to more of who you are and like what's aligned to you. And at the age of 35, it's a developmental period. It's called the independent period. And it is very natural for many of us to start to question, do I really believe in that? I've been doing that my whole life, but is that really what I'm all about? Do I really want to continue to ignore the fact that I'm a very creative human, that I feel like I constantly have to be on the go? You start to think about your values, because up until that point, you're learning from everybody else. You're learning from your parents when you're really young. You're learning from your friends, your teachers, college. There's a lot of influence there. And then society. And then you get to a place of like, when I was looking in that mirror, I was like, is this really all there is? Is this who I am? Is this who I'm becoming? I don't think so. And I don't think that I think that there's a connection to there. Like, I think especially now, there's so many people that are waking up to, I want more than this. I think that was a huge part of what's coming out of the pandemic, is like a reevaluation of values and people saying, I want more than this. Like, I actually know in my body and in my heart that I want more. And I think that's the spiritual component. I think there's a lot to be said about how the body is. There's a lot of spiritual leaders that believe, oh, you need to separate from the body. And I'm not one of those people. I actually think the body is really important to being connected to your spirit. And I think that's the key. Breathwork was what got me to a place of being more connected spiritually. I read a lot of books, and there's a lot of people that are like, you can't look at your body as a spiritual thing. I'm like, why would we be created with this incredible machine? Because it is. Like, you think about it, it's amazing if you know how to work with it. Why would we want to honor that? Yeah.
I agree. And I do. I think that, again, it's perception, isn't it? I think that I perceived things wrong before, as in, because everybody seemed to be talking about trying to get somewhere, like almost, to meditate and escape your body. Actually, I feel like the opposite is actually true more these days. Is actually, it's actually going within. At the end of the day, we are living in a physical. We are at present. We are spirit. We might be a spiritual being, but we are at present living in a physical body.
Yeah.
So surely we've got to focus. And I think that's what it is. It's everybody was a bit broken off. I come from a very physical. Woo, what's that? What are you talking about? Hadn't even come across it. It was all about the physical. And then as I don't know, in the last 10, maybe 15 years, they've been talking more about the mental health and bringing in the mental aspect. And then now finally this sort of spiritual, I think everything's coming together. Whereas there's some of the spiritual out of their bodies.
Yeah.
And everybody's separate and my way's the right way. But actually, no, we're all right. You're all right. All come together. All bring it in.
Yeah.
Bring it in.
Yeah.
That's the only way. So for you, I know, so you're focusing on coaching on women, have a 90-day program. So who is it? So what kind of, who are you specifically aiming your help with? Who comes to you and with what sort of problems, and how do you help them?
Yeah. So most of the women that come to me are experiencing what I experienced, where they're in that place of, I just feel really unclear about who I am and where I'm going and what the next step is. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was just so confused about really who I was, and not having that connection to, and I'm not even just saying like identifying as a mother, a wife, or being in your job, like whatever position you are. I'm talking about who you are deep down that maybe you feel really disconnected with. So most of the women that come to me have elements that I had of like people pleasing and overthinking and overgiving in order to feel needed and wanted in relationships. And that would show up in friendships, in their marriages, and in the workplace. And it gets them to this place because when we don't ignore our own when we ignore our own needs and our values, that's generally when we get to a place of burnout. And that's what I've discovered. We do that, and in a place of compassion, we do that because when we were really young, my parents were amazing and I loved them, but they were really young. Like they were in their early 20s, and they separated when I was 2, and they just couldn't be available for me in the way that even from a biological sense, that they helped me to feel really safe, and that helped me to feel like I was seen and belonged. And it really just comes down to having consistent nurturing. And it could even just be one event where you start to feel like, oh, if I do this, if I'm a really good girl, which is what everybody told me when I was young, oh, you're such a good girl. You just sit there and you're quiet and like all of those things. Oh, if I'm a good girl, that's what they want me to be, right? And that's what they want me to be and follow directions. So in school, like I always got an A+ in following directions. and that is good. And also there was no coaching in saying to me, Amy, how do you feel? What is it that you want to do? And encouraging me to voice what I wanted to voice. So the work that I do, we go back in time. There's a meditation that I do. It's timeline therapy. And we relearn some of those key moments that brought them to this place of the overthinking, the overdoing, the overachieving, and learning that they can find that safety and know that they belong within themselves as they get to know themselves more deeply. It's really powerful. I have a lot of women that are in relationships where the dynamic isn't healthy. They're married to maybe a narcissist or an alcoholic, and they really need help. Or they're in a place with their body where they have no idea how to heal them. I have a lot of women with stomach issues, and we do this work and they feel like they're empowered again to make some new choices in their life and also know how to heal themselves. That's the ultimate goal for me, is that I should say there's two. A is to bring you out of that place of fear and into a greater place of compassion for yourself and for others. And the second is to know that you have the tools to heal yourself. That's what breathwork is, right? Like our body is magical. It is. That's why I'm like, how can you not see the body as spiritual? It's so magical, right? I'm helping you to feel into the fact that you have more power than you think. You have more choice than what you think. Yeah.
Love that. And yeah, I 100% agree with you. Your body can heal itself. We just put it in a position where it's unable to, but when you put the body in the right state, then yes, your body can. Wonderful. To the listeners out there, because if you're watching this or seeing this on the podcast, and you can see all of Amy's details below, but to the listeners, how would they get in touch with you, Amy?
Yeah, they can get in touch with me. My website is therecreated.com. And then my Instagram is _recreated_. I'm mostly on Instagram, but I also am on LinkedIn, and that's under my name, Amy Shearer.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
It's been fascinating talking to you. And I've learned some stuff too. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Cool.
I love it. I'm not going to lie. That's one of the wonderful reasons why I do this, is connecting with people like yourself that are doing amazing things within their community. They've got different tools at their disposal, some that I've heard of, some that I haven't.
Yeah.
And this is why I say does seem to be a bit more of a pattern. I love seeing people like yourself bringing in different modalities, and then you're making it your own, and then you are unique to, you're helping people with different issues. And it's all good. It is a holistic approach.
Yeah.
And I really hope you're right. I do feel that obviously I'm not even going to mention the name, but of what's gone on in the last 3 years, but there is some good that I do feel there's a lot of good that has or is coming out of it. And like you say, they were forced to stop, weren't they? For one, you know, what did we mention earlier about everyone was just going, it was only when you went on holiday.
Yeah.
Again, it's the same kind of thing. You actually stopped.
Yeah.
And then you've got space to look and feel and, oh, hang on. And that's what happened to everybody. They were forced into a very long holiday and it wasn't anywhere hot because they weren't allowed out and they weren't allowed on the beach. But they were forced into it nonetheless. And it has. I do think people have they've definitely reevaluated. Yeah, are they happy? And going within. So there's got to have a good knock-on effect. Although, like you say, it's interesting when you say about you being introverted. So I've had two daughters, I have one introvert and one extrovert. So the introvert loved it in the beginning. Yeah. But again, it's like after a while, it was like, whoa. And interestingly, it was only from being on a show like this and having somebody explain the difference of introvert and extrovert, I was like, oh, where I was really worried about her, I was like, okay. Oh, no, she's okay because she likes that. But then it got too much. It was like, no, hang on. Yeah, we all need this balance. Yeah, you still, it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, honestly, it actually encouraged that whole feeling of wanting the connection. I think in many ways, that's how I got into breathwork because I was like, oh, I'd like to learn something new and I can do it from the safety of my home and like on the screen. And I entered different group coaching and I got to meet a lot of people that I probably never would have met. Because living in New York City, you have access to so much, right? That's just, you go and meet anybody anywhere. You could go to any yoga studio. You could do all of the things in person. But I now have friends like all over the world. And that's a beautiful thing. I really appreciate that. So I don't know that I would have engaged in that way had it not been for those moments.
Well, there you go. It's the same. This whole show wouldn't have come up without lockdown. It's funny how things go, but then you're on the right path. You're doing what you love and you're helping many people. So yeah, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
So to the listeners, I will be back on Monday. And if there are any other coaches, therapists, healers, from the conventional to the woo-woo, it doesn't have to be just the woo-woo. I know it says a sprinkling of woo-woo. We are definitely into scoops now. I say this a lot. We're no longer sprinkling, but it doesn't have to be. So if you're a coach and you want to either be a guest on the show, if you've ever thought about having your own show, we do have a podcast network. So we can help you create your own personally branded podcast channel within our network. Or if you need help with funnels or membership sites or anything like that, get in touch, same website, KarenRobertsCoaching.com. If you're /discovery, come and book a call with either myself or my team. So once again, thank you for your time and I'll be back on Monday. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.
Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical, and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.